Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Framewreck. I'm on the road. Matt and I are here with a very impromptu episode for you. But before we begin, in lieu of a cold open, Matt has prepared a little bit of an announcement for you all to enjoy. So Framewreck is going to start in just a few minutes, but first, let's take a look at this. You ready, Matt?
Yep. Hello! If you don't know me, my name is Matt Chapmond. If you do know me, hi! It's good to see you again. If you're not sure where you know me from and you're trying to figure out where you recognize me, you might know me from Framewreck on the Dyl Pickle Movie Network.
Wait, when did you guys make the memo that we were wearing
cats? We had a whole discussion about cats and how horny it is and how we should wear horny little ears.
Yeah, I feel like that was maybe...
For me, the train wreck moment of this movie is the forest/mountain reveal scene, because it starts with possibly the most ridiculous interaction in this whole movie, which is which is the I know what you are. He says, say it out loud, and then she says that she's a vampire, and then he like teleports around her as he's saying things, throws her on his back. Sonic the Hedgehog runs up the mountain, and then stands in the sun. And at this point, you're like, finally, we get this reveal, and it's just a slight sparkle, as though he were at the strip club recently. And I feel like, wow, that's easily overcome by wearing a hat.
Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.
What a story, Mark.
Or Draft Day. This director should be talked about in the same breath as some of the all-time great directors. He has made some incredible movies throughout his career. I can't pick this director without picking my favorite movie, which is Dead Poets Society. I'm picking Peter Weir. Peter Weir. Or one of my guest spots on Picture This or Marvelous Movie Mondays. I was not excited to watch this movie. But guys, let me tell you, it did not take long before I was in love with this movie. I love this movie. There's sincerity that I really, really love. And that's one thing about her, is that like the fact that she embraced this character with complete sincerity, and she didn't have to really compromise to get to that point with her character, really, really spoke to me in a way that I didn't realize it was going to. So yeah, it's weird, but it also I also really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Well, now you're gonna have a brand new way to recognize me. I'm very pleased to announce the launch of my very own channel on October 31st, Halloween Day. And without further ado, I'm proud to welcome you all to Maddie Loves Movies, the MLM you can trust. Maddie Loves Movies will have two flagship shows. The first, which will drop at launch on October 31st, is Camp Film Film Camp. You are now all campers in the Camp Film Film Camp, and I am your camp director. As campers, you will be able to earn merit badges in various campy film subgenres, sub-subgenres, even sub-sub-subgenres. The show will air at least once a month with new theme and new badges every episode. Here are some of the upcoming events you can expect from Camp Film Film Camp. On Halloween this year, our first episode, you'll be able to earn the Undead badge, as we discuss the films Bubba Hotep, Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead, Death Becomes Her, the original Fright Night from 1985, and Return of the Living Dead. Be sure to refresh yourself on those films so you can join in the discussion when it drops on Halloween. In November, we'll be talking about campy sports movies. In December, we'll have a holiday-themed episode. November, December movies will be announced in the future. In January, we will begin a series honoring the late great king of B-movies, Roger Corman. These episodes will be spread out sporadically over the next year, and by the end of the series, we will have covered every Roger Corman movie he ever directed. Some of his movies are wall-to-wall camp. Some didn't have any camp at all. We're going to cover every film. The second flagship show will air the following week on November 7th, and it's called Cinema Soapbox. In this series, I will gather a panel of film lovers for TED Talk-style film presentations. Each episode, a member of the panel will present on a topic they care about, and then field questions from the rest of the panel. It might be a film theory, it might be an appeal for an underloved or infamous movie, You might even question the genre of beloved holiday classic. Or is it just an action film? Those are the kind of questions we're going to answer on Cinema Soapbox. In addition to these series, you will also find sundry one-off videos like reviews, essays, film chats, as they happen. If any of this sounds like something you might enjoy, please subscribe to the channel and check us out on October 31st on Maddie Loves Movies.
What a story, Mark.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to an all-new episode of Framewreck that no one knew was happening except for me and you. And I might have accidentally let it slip to Carly when we were reviewing Old on the last episode of Framewreck. But we are doing a surprise Megalopolis review. Matt, how fun is this going to be? I mean, it is a Framewreck episode.
I'm feeling good. I'm excited to talk about this movie. Now, it's been a little bit since I've seen it. I know you've seen it more recently, so I'm not going to have a lot of the finer you remember a lot of the finer details of it, but I have a lot to say about it, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and if anyone wonders why my internet or my picture might go at I am on the road. I am on the run, if you will, repping Band on the Run at the Twin Cities Film Festival in Minnesota. So I'm here on Matt's Central Time, which made it so fun to schedule because we were on the same time zones. But yeah, it was one of those things where when we heard the first reviews trickling in, we were like, we need to just get on and talk about Megalopolis. So this isn't going to be structured like a classic like Framewreck episode where we're going to go like beat by beat. What makes it great? Background, legacy, because it hasn't had all the legacy, and like the background is, you know, we don't have 10 hours, and also just the movie itself, like Matt said, like we saw it recently, but you know, we saw it in theaters, and it's hard when you're prepping a Framewreck episode. Usually Matt watches it twice, or 3 times, or 4 times, depending on how many times I or Matt delays it. But also in the theater, we can't have any of the, okay, let me pause and write down that line of dialogue moments. So that's what makes this a little bit challenging. But I do just want to get on and talk about it because it is kind of one of the bigger, bolder swings and misses we've seen of this ilk. Like we recently saw Joker 2 also kind of do a very similar thing financially, but I feel like it's not having the same conversation around it that this film is, because this film is kind of more in that Framewreck lens of like so bad it's good, whereas Joker, a lot of people just think it's bad. Megalopolis is the perfect film to come along as like a new release to get us excited Framewreck wise. But Matt, what were your like first just reactions to Megalopolis?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that this is how the conversation went when Francis decided he wanted to do this movie. He comes in, talking to his son. Francis says, "Roman, I want to make a Shakespearean adaptation."
Wait. His son is named Roman. I am totally realizing that right now. wait. So his son's name is Roman. His name is Francis. And the Roman Empire with a baby named Francis.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But Francis comes in and says, "Hey, Roman, I want to make a Shakespearean adaptation." Roman says, "Okay, which play?" Francis says, "What do you mean, which play?" This movie felt like an adaptation of every Shakespearean work, every political play, every tragedy, every comedy. It felt just like an amalgamation of all that, which actually I really loved about it. Like it felt like something that was actually, a lot of it felt like it was tailored to me. Like I was just like, oh, I love what he's doing right here. The film is a mess. That was my first thought about it. But I also think it's a little bit brilliant. It's hard to parse out exactly. I haven't like given it a score or really a review yet. Obviously, this is going to be my review because it's very difficult.
Yeah, I was going to say the thing I'm dreading most is going on Letterboxd and having to assign a star to it, because the only movie I've ever omitted stars from is my own, is Band on the Run, the one I'm wearing the sweatshirt for right now, because I'm not going to give it a rating. That is my film. I'm not going to do that. But for something like this, I'm like, how do you even gauge it? Like, do I give it 5 stars because it is the most like incredible thing I've ever seen, just in terms of just like thoughts, just like I'm thinking about it so much, or do I give it like a few stars because like it is a mess? But also I think why people are probably going to tune into this and be like, oh, these are going to be two guys just dunking on Megalopolis because it's a bad movie show. No, and I think you said it best. Like, it is brilliant, and it is also a mess, and it is also terrible, and it is also fantastic. Like, I don't think it belongs in any one category to where I don't think you can call it bad, but I also don't think you can either. No, like
I agree. It definitely lives in this like liminal space where and here's the thing, I don't think we have to do that. That is more what the conversation should be. The conversation a lot is this a bad movie? Is this a good movie? I think we should just throw that idea out the window.
Yeah.
This is a thing, like it's an experience, it's a thing. Like, of all the films I watch, and I watch a lot of films, I watch a lot of art movies that are just purely art, I watch a lot of entertainment stuff. Of all the films I've ever seen, this is the one that I feel like could hang in the Met, and we would look at it as though it were just this masterpiece that we're all trying to interpret. Like, that's how I feel about this movie.
Yeah, well, I want to first talk about just like the visual style of it, because this is a movie that, like you said, like in terms of like the inspiration behind the story, he's like, I want to make a Shakespearean type story. But like the actual just like funding for it and the journey there, we could talk a little bit about it, because this is very notably one of those like big like director blank checks. Not even, because he didn't even get a blank check from a studio to do this because of success. He just relied on his own success to fund his own personal like hobbies, which is like vineyards and wining, to then whining as in like the drink, not like whining like fans whine about, you know, criticism and shit like that. But you know what I mean. More for the viewers, not for you, Matt. I knew you knew what I meant. But like, you know, he has a winery and he's built so much money. It reminds me of what Kevin said for, I'm gonna just put all of my into this because I'm so passionate about it. I don't need a studio to tell you. I don't need any directors to guide me. I'm all my money that I have earned from hobbies, or it wasn't a hobby. Maybe it was solely to fund this film. But either way, taking his own money to put into this film, and because of that, like a film that is stuck in the era that it was first pitched in like the 80s or 90s, but you also have the modern sensibilities because it was only filmed recently. So it's like this really kind of fascinating high. Old and new all at once, because he had this idea so long ago, but just needed the funds to make it happen, and that took 20 years to do. You know, it's fascinating to me.
Well, and he actually sold his vineyard too, in order to finance this. Like
I didn't even know that. I thought it was just the profits of the wine. I didn't realize. Okay.
Oh, it was partially that he made the money off the wine, and then he sold the vineyard, and all of that money also went into making this film. And here's the thing: you can see every dollar on the screen. Like, they didn't. It's not like he wasted anything. It's a John Hammond thing from Jurassic Park. We spared no expense. He spared no expense on this movie. Like, you can see the money spent in this movie, which completely adds to, I think, that everything is great about it. Like, it needs to be this spectacle. And here's my thing, and this is really my big take from this movie, is that it needed to be this divisive spectacle in order for us to keep talking about it. If it had been a masterpiece, we would have talked about how it was a masterpiece. We probably would have talked about it through award season, maybe even, but we wouldn't have talked about the content of the movie. We would have talked about the whether it was the best movie or whatever like that.
Right.
In this case, we're talking about this movie for so long. We're still talking about it. We're going to be talking about it, I assume, for years. This is not a flash in the pan movie.
Yeah. This
is a movie I think we're going to be talking about for a very long time. And I think that is incredible.
Yeah, and I think the box office would like suggest that no one will remember this one. Like, no one saw it in the theaters. But I also think there's something to be said about like legacy and cult classic status, and the fact that like this is a Francis Ford Coppola movie. 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now, when kids are getting into film and they watch The Godfather and they watch Apocalypse Now, they're going to stumble upon this because they want to watch Francis Ford Coppola's movies. You know, people are also going to stumble upon this because it is a box office disaster, and because it does have this kind of weird hype around it in a so bad it's good way, or maybe it actually is brilliant way, to where I'm going to make a bold prediction right now and say that this does become like one of the defining cult, like underappreciated, almost like Jupiter Ascending is now, like for last decade with the Wachowskis. Like, I feel like this is going to be that in like 10, 15 years. Like, I feel like a lot of people are going to, first off, just come around and say it's just a flat out good film. And also, I think people are just going to become bigger fans of it. Like, I don't think it's going to have this small bubble of like little film nerds who know about it and saw it when. But I think it's going to kind of catch on. I really hope it does, because I do think it has so many ideas. Do all the ideas make sense with one another, or do they make sense at all? Maybe not. But it is just one of those things where it's like, if you are a fan of film, you have to appreciate something like this. You don't have to like it, but you have to appreciate it, because it is just one of the biggest swings I've seen a filmmaker take. Someone who has done quite literal perfection in his career, literally needing to find a way to follow it up. And instead of trying to outdo it, he just says, you know what, let me take a total pivot, a whole 180, and just do what I want to do. Basically take every idea I have and stuff it into one thing that makes sense. What's the only thing to conjoin all these different ideas? A city? I don't know. Cities are big, and that's kind of what this is. It's like, how do you tell a bunch of these different stories and themes in one? You just make the story about just a city building these different buildings and making it come together and finding that gold like lining throughout, which is quite literally what the film is,
Right. Well, and exactly. And to touch on your point about it being, in the decades to come, it being revisited and reviewed and seen as a genuinely good movie, I completely agree with that. I think it's going to be that. And I think some of the reasons and some of the, I don't know if this is the reasons it didn't necessarily work as well today for some people or not, but I think that we are too, despite it being almost futuristic, being futuristic and almost dystopian or I don't know if I'd call it, whatever it is. It's
right. It is not dystopia, but it's also not present, but it's also not past. It's all
right
together,
Despite it being that, it is, I think, a little bit too close to what it's commenting on, maybe, to be appreciated by some people today. It's a scathing critique of capitalism, and being in late stage capitalism, I think in decades to come, they're going to be like, oh, Frank knew what was going on. It talks about the state of our politics. I think we may be a little too close to January 6th for all of the Shia LaBeouf stuff to really to really resonate with us yet. I think we recognize it, and I think that may be why maybe we're a little numb to it at this point. So I think in the future, that stuff is going to resonate a little bit more. Another thing that I think is important to remember is this movie ends on a very hopeful note. Despite how close it is to what we are experiencing today, it ends very hopefully. And I think in a couple of decades, they're going to look back at that and either go, wow, imagine if, or go, wow, he was right. I think I agree. I think this film is going to resonate. And, you were talking about like the box office doesn't look like many people are going to remember it. I can't think of a film that did as poorly as this one did that I've seen as many people talking about as this in a long, long time. Like, and I see it everywhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like people are talking about it without having even seen it. Like, a lot of people are watching that one clip online, because there's really only one clip online, like in its entirety, of like the Adam Driver, Natalie Emmanuel back and forth, where she's like, entitles me.
Entitles me?
Yes.
Entitles me?
Yes.
Entitles me?
Yes.
Entitles me? And he's like, go back to the club. Like that whole meme.
So go back to the club.
Go back to the club.
Go back to the back to the club.
That whole meme has become a meme.
Fine. I will.
But I feel like everyone's talking about it having not even seen it. And it's like one of those things where, normally I'd be pissed off about that. I'm like, see it with your own eyes, like give it its support. But I do think, you know what, if this is getting people talking about it, whereas like I don't really see weeks later people talking about Joker. And I know we both differ a little bit, because you did like that movie, I didn't. But it's also one of those things where I feel like that is a movie where I expected, people to talk about for months and months and months, and it might go on, but it seems like even that has fizzled. Whereas Megalopolis, I really do hope it carries on, like you said, because it feels like it's coming out at the right time in politics, which is very odd, because it is an idea he's been brewing for decades and decades. So has this just been a recurring thing that is now heightened with like social media and the news and just like the severity of the divide, or is it just something that he foreshadowed a long time ago, or do you think he kind of reshaped certain things in the recent years that kind of led to this, or it might just be like a mix of both? But it is very, I've been struggling, like, so I knew, but like, has he always been trying to say this, or was this a last minute pivot? Because I feel like the politics are the biggest thing about it that is like the most like obvious in terms of its themes,
I would say, and here's what I'm thinking, if there was a retool of it, I think that I think probably the concept of the political divide and all that has probably been there. But I think when it was conceived of, like in the 90s, the resistance was probably more of the good guys. I think that was probably more that idea. And then since the shift in our politics in the last 8 years, we've seen how things have kind of changed. I think he probably pivoted that maybe a little bit more to reflect today a little bit more, because you had the LA riots and stuff like that. Like, those people would have been not seen as poorly as the people in this movie are seen, at least by me, because I love a good resistance, but that was clearly a January 6th riot, not a police are killing us riot. So I think if there was a pivot, there was that. But
and the most interesting thing also is that it does have this like large sense of like modern politics, and it almost feels very left wing in that respect. Also, you have Francis Ford Coppola kind of running with his own age and the fact that he has at times been questioned for some like kind of icky behavior at times, and he's making a commentary on that, quite literally going out of his way to cast people like Shia LaBeouf, people like John Voight, like even Aubrey Plaza, not to, but who have had like little bits of criticism for their own politics and their own kind of things done just in times. So I just think that's also a fun looking at it. I'm like, he's this whole like cancel culture thing as well, divide with the progressive politics he's saying as well, which makes me kind of question like how much of this is stuck in the past, how much of it is like new things that he's been thinking about, especially because even when it was filmed, there were like talks about on set, which were then debunked, which were then kind of revitalized, then debunked again. So it really just becomes this kind of like never-ending question, and I think this is where it could kind of get a cult following up, both because you do have the people who are more like, all right, everyone's so woke, cancel culture, but then there's also like the whole like, what you were saying with capitalism and the January 6th riots. It feels like, it does feel like a film that could kind of essentially kind of bring light on both sides, which is something we don't really see with cinema nowadays. Though I do think if you are one way or the other, one element does feel a little obstructive. It doesn't totally work. So I just wanted your thoughts on that, like especially the cancel culture stuff, because that is a main part of it as well.
Right. My thoughts on. Okay. So when
it's a heavy question.
What? Oh, it's a heavy question.
I'm saying it's a heavy question.
Yeah. It is. Okay, so when Francis explained why he purposely went after canceled actors for this, I think his explanation was kind of waved away, and people made fun of it, but I kind of get what he is saying, because what he said was basically, I don't want people thinking this is a woke movie. I think what he meant was, I don't want people not coming to it because it's a woke movie. I think that was at least part of his intention with that quote. I don't think he was trying to say, I don't want the woke crowd. I think he was saying, I don't want to lose the people other people who might need to see this. As far as the cancel culture stuff, as far as like the messaging within the film, it's very interesting because on one hand, a sensible person can agree with basically everything that he says in it. Like with that, not everything is true, and you kind of have to look at things objectively, even if people you agree with are making good cases and stuff like that. You kind of have to look at things objectively, and people deserve second chances. Not everyone. Most people deserve second chances. I think anyone can have it. I think anyone or almost anyone has a path to a second chance. It requires work on their side. So I think a sensible person can agree with the things that are saying there. I think that you can look at it in a kind of a more negative way, and take something else from it and kind of look at it as he's saying, "Oh, you shouldn't cancel people," which I don't think is what he's saying. I think he's saying something that a sensible person might agree with. I just think that it's a very touchy and it's very nuanced conversation that we should be having, and it's okay that it's nuanced. And maybe not everybody has to agree with what he's saying, but I can get where the film is coming from.
Right.
a lot.
And I think that just adds to the boldness of it too. Just the fact that you have these ideas to contemplate, because it's not as black and white, as left and right as it may seem initially. Like, and I know like the whole like Q&A beforehand was all just like a dunking on one of the presidential candidates, because like Robert De Niro was on the panel. So what do you expect? But it's also
Right.
like, you know, I do think, you know, in time, especially once we've kind of crossed this hurdle where there's, I mean, who knows? Maybe there will always be this divide. You know, maybe this is not something that we'll recover from anytime soon. But like you said, like maybe in a few years we will say like he was right, or you know, we are going to say, wow, like if only we could have this utopia, this megalopolis. And it kind of then takes on a more bittersweet meaning in that sense. But I like how it kind of just brings all these themes to light, because we haven't really gotten into the story, but I feel like it's not a movie about its story. You know, it's not about, you know, oh, what happens in that? It's like, you really can't even explain it. Like you opened with the Shakespeareanness of it, and I opened with like the politics of it, but it's like, it's not about one thing. And I think that's why some people are a little bit kind of at an arm's distance from it leaving the theater. Some people said it's like a test of, you know, patience, but I was never bored by it. Like I really don't know where that's coming from, because it has so much on its mind that you can at least, I feel like even if you're not enjoying the language or the characters, like it can at least still think about it, which I think is more engaging than like something that's just mindless, stupid entertainment. You know what I mean?
Right. And yeah, I completely agree. And I 100% agree. I was never bored. Not at one point was I didn't check my watch. I wasn't at any point going, gosh, will this finally be over?
Because it's not that long. I mean, like it is 2 hours and 18 minutes, but for a movie like this, normally a movie like this would be 3 hours, because you're getting your Oppenheimers, your Killers of the Flower Moons. Like big epics are usually 3 hours nowadays.
I was actually very surprised, because this and Joker are the exact same length. And I saw them on the same day. And so I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. But I expected a Francis Ford Coppola movie, especially that looks this epic, to be 3 hours at least.
Or at least
it wasn't.
and I don't know if we're on the same page on this, but I do think this one feels a lot shorter than Joker does. And I think one is...
I agree with that. Because although you had mentioned I did enjoy Joker, I was not wrapped to the screen the whole time. I was checking my watch occasionally on that one. That one felt but this one,
and that's a whole other conversation, you know.
With this movie, I was engaged the whole time, and not only that, I think to its benefit, the messiest stuff, the messiest version of this movie is the first hour. The second hour actually is pretty clean, and I think that is to its benefit, that you get through all of like I think the really messy stuff that I completely enjoyed. The editing is crazy in that first hour, and there's a lot happening. But I think once you get past that first hour, it's a fairly clean movie. It still is crazy, but it's fairly clean. So if you get past that first hour, the second hour is almost more enjoyable and less likely to make you check your get bored or check your watch. So I think that is to its benefit. I will say that as a whole, and just as we're talking about, and this was true in the theater, and I'm realizing it as we're talking about this, I think this is a recommend for me. I don't know how you, I don't know how you want to structure this or how we should structure this, but for me, I'm realizing like I actually think this is a good movie because of what I mentioned earlier. I said I think the mess of it is important for this film because its main goal seems to be the conversation, which it's completely accomplishing. And I think I actually really like this, at least. And even if I wouldn't say great movie or masterpiece or good movie, which I might say any of those things, I'm not quite sure yet. At the very least, I want to see it again.
Yeah, and it's a shame that you can't, because they're pulling it from all the theaters, which I guess makes sense because no one went to see it. But it's like, this is something that I wish could stay around, especially in like IMAX. Like I feel like it does have this grandeur that, you know, when you said like it comes together in second hour, it comes together because of that big like party set piece. We haven't really gotten to the details of the plot, but like, you know, you've got like Grace Vanderwall from America's Got Talent literally cloned 200 times, and you've got like everyone at the party and everyone's doing weird shit, and Adam Driver's talking about how much he loves like mini weenies wrapped in and puff pastry, and like it feels like that's where it really kind of kicks up another notch. I agree, because the first hour is kind of just setting the groundwork, especially because also this is also foreign. These are not like IP. This is not IP, so we don't know who any of these characters are, any of the relations. We don't know who's married to who's cheating on who with who's having an affair, who's the father of who, and then once it all kind of comes together and you see them all kind of in one place, and then it kind of splits apart from there. Like I agree, like it does have a very interesting structure to where I do think, yeah, that first hour could be alienating. But I also think another thing we have to note is the performances, because I do think, when we think about like, is it a good movie or is it a bad movie? I think in Framewreck's sense too, like we talk about like what is intentional, what is not. And I think the best thing about Megalopolis is that the people who are taking it seriously are the roles that should be taken seriously. And the ones who feel more farcical and satirical are the ones that maybe feel more written to be farcical and satirical, like John Voight, Shia LaBeouf. The characters, they are the ones who are more goofy, buffoon, like even Giancarlo Esposito, who is, not a canceled person, obviously, but his character is meant to be a little bit more, silly and out there and just a little bit broader. And then you have the people who are kind of playing it a little bit more seriously, like Adam Driver, even Aubrey Plaza, Natalie Emmanuel, and I think it creates a cool balance, because it does kind of show that old and new. It's like the more classic and the more out there, or in some senses the classical one is the more out there, the broader one, then the more serious one is like the more modern style of acting. And I think that's what's great. The language, like you mentioned with the Shakespeare, there are language things in this film where some of it feels very modern, some of it feels very old. The city itself, it is all about modernity versus old-fashionedness. So I think that makes it intentional by half of it being feeling unintentional, if that makes sense. Like half of it feels like he didn't understand it and it's just going off the rails on the rails, that it makes me feel like all of it was intentional, but there was a clear divide in how he wanted to make things feel that dichotomy regardless, which I think is very fascinating. But I don't know if you felt that as well.
Oh, I definitely agree. In terms of the acting, I think that every person in this movie understood their role and what they were supposed to do. I don't think you can fault any person in this movie for their acting. Because you were absolutely right. The farcical ones felt farcical. The serious ones felt serious. I think the only completely serious character in this movie is Natalie Emmanuel. She's the only completely serious. Adam Driver is mostly serious, but he does have that very flamboyant stuff and the speeches and the stuff so I think that the only one that's completely serious is her. But I think that's to its benefit. I think that she is almost this constant that we can hold on to while everyone else just gets to be crazy and cascading craziness. Like the people who are closer to her in this movie are a little crazier than her, and the people who go further out are a little crazier than that. Like it's almost this cascading thing that I think really works in terms of the acting. Again, I understand why that may not connect with everyone who watches it, but for me, I thought that was completely great. Speaking of acting, there is one thing, and I know we're not doing like superlatives or anything. I did want to shout out an actor who every time she was on screen, my eyes were glued to her, and she was a big enough part that that was okay for that to be the case, but she was a small enough part that she wasn't in a lot of the movie, and that is Chloe Fineman.
Chloe Fineman's really good in this.
She's really good in this movie. Every single time she's on screen, no matter what she was doing, I was like, she is it almost feels, and this feels weirdly disrespectful, and I don't mean it this way. It almost feels like, what is she doing on Saturday Night Live? And not to disparage Saturday Night Live where the actor's on it, but I'm just like, he could be doing great work.
Right, because I mean, like sketch comedy and like a major motion picture epic blockbuster made by Francis Ford Coppola are two very different things. But I also think, taking people from different styles, and the reason I guess Adam Driver's performance felt less of the like more satirical side and more of like the like straight man performances, because he's just so good that like everything I was still glued in on, even when he is flamboyant. But you are right, like he does have those moments. Everyone has those moments. I think Lawrence Fishburne also has it a little bit more real, but also he's not a huge part. But I think what's interesting is Jack of a different era, different style, and Chloe Fineman's another example. Like she is like this sketch comedy actress. I mean, like Grace Vanderwaal was a singer on America's Got Talent. Like Jason Schwartzman always plays these character roles. He's in every movie now, it feels like. You have Talia Shire, who is like one of the golden era like great actresses of the 70s. Adam Driver, who's like fresh and new. John Voight, who's like a classic one. Aubrey Plaza, who is also kind of in the similar vein of Chloe Fineman in the sense that she got her start in like TV, kind of just being the quirky kind of side character. And she's even giving a very dramatic performance in this too. Like she has some heavy moments, even though she gets to lean into the humor a little bit as well. So I really like how he kind of pulls from like every kind of corner. It doesn't feel like he's just going the same old crop of types of actors. You know, everyone feels like they're doing a different thing. Even Catherine Hunter, who I also really, really love, you know, she was in the Macbeth movie. She played all three witches, and, you know, she was in Poor Things. She always feels like the more, you know, kind of comical, you know, she's the character actress, but here she's playing just like the mayor's wife, and she's just playing a very normal character. I actually think her moments are really beautiful too. Like when she's like going down the river, that is kind of just like those treadmills you have at the airports that just kind of move. You know, it's a very cool design. I would be obsessed if that was true. But like even those moments, I'm like, oh, that's very sweet. But it's like Catherine Hunter. Like this is the lady who was in that Brandy movie a month ago, that horror movie where she's like the evil mother-in-law. Like I just love seeing all these character actors from like different eras and different styles, like Chloe Fineman with SNL and all these different actors just come together to kind of understand the assignment. Like you said, like every actor knows exactly what their purpose is. And there are people who are leaving this saying Shia LaBeouf's performance is so bad. I'm like, yes, exactly. Like that is the point. It's not the Framewreck sense of like he thought he was giving a good performance. I think he was giving a bad performance, which then in turn made a good performance.
Right. I agree. I think he knew exactly what he was supposed to do and he executed it. I agree. I completely agree. You mentioned that moving sidewalk scene. I unexpectedly loved that scene because it was just so adorable that the thing that convinces the mayor is how much his wife likes the moving sidewalk thing. And it was just such a cute little adorable scene. But I completely agree with you that everything was firing on all cylinders, the fact that everything in this movie individually works so well again leads to this idea that this movie is well made and that what's happening, our reaction to it and how we're perceiving it is completely correct and intentional. I think he said it since then, and a lot of times it's like Tommy Wiseau who says, my movie's always been a dark comedy.
Right.
It hasn't. But he said it after. He was like, listen, guys, this movie is meant to make you talk. It's not meant for everyone to enjoy it. And you hear a quote like that, and you're like, yeah, okay. That sounds like some
it feels like he's covering his
morning.
tracks. Yeah.
That sounds like some Monday morning quarterbacking. But when we talk about it and how everything, we haven't found a thing that there might be things, but we haven't found an individual thing that we feel like is the misstep. That it feels like he's right. Like that is what he was doing because that's how it feels, this movie.
Yeah. And like you opened it by saying like it is a mess. And I do agree. And it's like the question is like what makes it a mess? And I think it's just the fact that he is just trying to tackle a lot. And I think it is just overly ambitious. But then is that even a fault? Like I think being a mess can be a beautiful thing because I think we see so many just clean, tight to the point blockbusters that all these studios have finally gone through. I don't know the term about like a fine comb picking. I don't know. There's a phrase that I'm trying to find that I'm not able to like.
Fine tooth comb.
There we go. That was close. But yeah, I'm tired. I've been flying and hoteling all day. But it's like, the idea that like maybe the mess is intentional, but mess unconventional feels like a bad thing to a lot of people. But I feel like if more movies were made like this, that were intentionally kind of taking on so many different things at once and being this kind of big overstuffed thing, would we be looking at this as a mess, as a bad thing? Or is it just because this is so unconventional? Like, I think that's really the question, because I really don't think any of it, like you said, is like that bad. It's just very unconventional. So it like feels bad because we're just not used to seeing anything like it. But I love that about it, and I'm sure you do too, as you've said.
I do love it. I love it the more we talk about it. I will say this, that when you say that it is overambitious, that that term means a thing, but when you put it in the context of this Francis Ford Coppola movie is overambitious, it almost makes that word feel smaller. Like, can he be overambitious? Because he's made some of the greatest, most ambitious, epic movies in history. So is it overambitious, or is it exactly the amount of ambitious that he wanted to make because he's Francis Ford Coppola?
Right. And it might be because he's just been gone for so long. Because, he hasn't even really been gone for that long, but he hasn't been making, like, Godfathers in a while. Like, I feel like Apocalypse Now was his last, like, true masterpiece. But even then, like, I was going through some of his films from the 90s, and, like, there's a lot of good hidden gems in there. I just feel like it's, like, they're not as widely seen, so people just don't assume that he's made anything in forever.
Maybe
but really,
maybe
he's been doing well.
maybe it's because I'm from or I live in Tulsa, but The Outsiders in 1982 was to me, I think, his last masterpiece.
Well, yeah, and some would even say like Bram Stoker's Dracula. A lot of people hate that film, but a lot of people who love that film. Love that film. Like I had that on VHS. This is one of the first VHSs I can remember because my mom had it. It was like that gray slipcover. Like I could visually distinctly remember it now. But I really do think it's one of those things where I really don't necessarily think he ever left. It's just, I think when you set a bar so high early in your career, and this is like the whole blank check, kind of philosophy of like, how long does Hollywood keep faith that you're going to match your original brilliance? And then when do they call it quits? And I think this is an example where they were like, it's just been too long, bud. Like we're just not going to invest in it. And I understand why they didn't, but it's like, if a studio had just had enough faith to push it a little bit more with the marketing, maybe put the right scenes out there, maybe just like at least prepare us for what it was going to be, I feel like it would have been a lot more successful. All the studios were just scared of it because they just like, it's been since 1982. And it's like, yeah, but I mean, look at Spielberg. Like, obviously, he's come back now with like West Side Story and The Fabelmans getting all these Oscar nominations, even like Bridge of Spies and The Post. So he's probably not the best example, but there was even a period of time where people were like, maybe he's like past his prime. And like, so you're going to say everything after Schindler's List now shouldn't get the green light? It's like, it's weird how Hollywood does pick and choose who gets those big checks and who doesn't. Like, if you have failure after failure after failure, like someone like M. Night Shyamalan, who we just talked about on Old, like there's a reason for a studio to be trepidatious, and then you earn back that respect by going small again, which he did with Split and Glass and Knock at the Cabin and Old. Now he's building his way back up to make something bigger, hopefully soon. But I feel like Francis Ford Coppola never really had that, big betrayal. Like I can't think of a point where studios are like, oh, yep, nope, he's in director jail, which is so weird to me.
Well, I will say that the low point of his career, and you haven't seen this because we had this discussion already, but I would say that Jack is probably the point where people were like, okay, has he lost his mind? I was a kid when that came out. I enjoyed Jack, but it's objectively not a bad movie. But I will say this: if we're not holding Spielberg accountable for Hook, we can't hold Francis Ford Coppola accountable for Jack. That's
and
how
here's
I
the thing.
feel.
A lot of people love Hook, and I almost said Hulk, but a lot of people love Hook, and I think it's valid because I really just don't think every film is gonna be Schindler's List, Jurassic Park.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. It's like I feel like every film, like even like our co-host of the channel, Chad, has talked about, like Jack was a favorite film of his when he was younger. He's watched it since and realized it's not as good. But like there is an audience that thinks Jack is great, and there's audiences that think The Rainmaker is great, or Tetro, or Twixt. All these movies that like no one really talks about, but I feel like every director has fans of every movie. It's just you just have to be able to market it right. Like how many times do we see a director that we all thought we had no faith in just come back with something and it's like, oh no, they're back. They're so back. And it's like, like James Cameron, for example, is another person I think of where it's like, he made Avatar so long ago and then he makes a new one and it's a box office smash. So it's like I feel like we shouldn't judge directors based on their last movies. If their last movie is a huge success, then yeah, give them that check because obviously they've shown they're capable. But like, if you haven't hit the lows, like have a little faith. Like I wish the studios had a little bit more faith in him, especially because they're not risking any money to produce it. He's done all that with all they have to do is market it. Like it's an easy task. You're being given a movie by the guy who made The Godfather and basically saying, I've done I bought this movie. I put this movie together. All you need to do is market it. And I feel like that's just where like good on Lionsgate for doing that. But like, I feel like any studio should have thought that was a gift, regardless of what the con reception at the film festival was. Like I feel like if you get handed this, you make lemonade, get those lemons, make lemonade. But again, hopefully we're here now to be those guys, like the hype men, to get people interested, because it is something that I feel like everyone should see because it's going to lead to good conversation,
Absolutely. 100%. I just one last thing on what you were saying. Actually, I've forgotten, so never mind. Cut that out.
Yeah, something about Hook, Spielberg, James Cameron.
Yeah, I don't remember.
If it goes back, let me know. But yeah, that was just my big rant about studios and when they pick and choose who gets that treatment of like director jail versus we'll fund whatever you do. And it then puts pressure on a lot of people like Jordan Peele, Greta Gerwig, these up and comers. I shouldn't say are up and comers; they're established at this point. But it's also like 3 films under the belt. Now they have to be walking on eggshells, hoping that the 4th one doesn't suck. Because who knows if they'll be the next Damien Chazelle?
I remembered what it was. You were talking about marketing. Because unfortunately, there was a huge marketing blunder with this movie.
Yes, we should talk about that.
Which I thought, and I'm pretty sure you thought before we found out everything, we thought it was brilliant.
Oh, it was so brilliant. Yes,
was
which
brilliant.
was for people who haven't heard. Matt, tell them what it was. The marketing.
It was okay. So the marketing was they flashed up a bad review, and then they would flash what movie it was from. So it'd be a bad review, and it'd be Godfather. It'd be a bad review, and then it'd be Apocalypse Now. And so basically the idea was, don't listen to the bad reviews. Come watch this. Like, which I think is a great way to do that. I hate it when marketing will be like, don't listen to critics, because come on, listen to critics. Like, you don't have to agree with all the critics, but don't disparage critics. But this is saying, like, look, even these great movies have some bad reviews, so don't worry about it. Unfortunately, those weren't for those movies.
No, I don't even know if they were for any movie. I think they were AI. It was either Chat GPT or they were pulling them from other movies. Yeah,
I think it was. They didn't. I think they. I think at least their claim was that they didn't realize they weren't from the other movies. But I'm pretty sure one was from a Batman movie.
It might have been like a mix of both, where they went to ChatGPT and was like, find bad quotes about Francis Ford Coppola movies, and they just like spit out a bunch of random like Batman quotes, like, and I think there's a danger to that, obviously, and like now looking back, that was a horrible idea. But I like the sentiment where it's like, you went to one film festival and you got panned, and like look at the inverse of that. Look at Joker, which didn't get panned at the film festival, but at least like the reviews were okay, and then it wasn't until like audiences start seeing it where people didn't like it. But that's just the most recent example I can make. I'm not trying to dunk on a film that I know you like, but it's a recent example. But I think you can't judge one film festival off of it.
You really can't judge a movie based on film festival positive or negative, because a film festival atmosphere is completely different than anybody else's viewing experience.
Yeah, and it is heightened. It's
good reviews feel.
It's like. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. You cut out just a second, so I thought you were not talking. No, like, good reviews, good movies are always get much better reviews. More disappointing movies always get much lower reviews when you go to a film festival. So it's for people who are at film festivals, or even from premieres and stuff like that. So, because Dan Murrow, a fellow critic, once did the numbers and showed that, like, the further you get away from the first time people see a movie, the worse the reviews get, and that is just with any movie, and that is just because the thing wears off eventually. Like that's why I'm not jumping too far into the Gladiator 2 train, because the first premiere happened and everyone's like, this is the best movie ever made, and I'm like, all right. And I'm excited for it, and I'm hopefully expecting it to be the best movie ever made. It would be the best thing ever if that was the case. But you can't say your expectations, like you said, either way, because what I was saying before I got cut out of the Wi-Fi was that, like, at a film festival, if everyone's applauding and standing on their feet, you're like, oh, that was good. It's like that idea where, like, I can't say it's bad now because everyone's applauding. Or you have a Q&A. Like, there was, I saw Hard Truths at New York Film Festival, and as soon as it ended, I was like, wow, I was underwhelmed. And then hearing Michael Lee talk about the movie, I'm like, no, wait, this is brilliant. And that could be a case too, where you like go to a film festival, maybe what you thought was good based on the Q&A or based on the response of the crowd sours you on it, or vice versa, makes you more positive on it. So I think, I like the sentiment behind the marketing of, like, the first reviews for those movies weren't good. I mean, look at The Shining, another example of a film that was panned when it came out, and then now it's on the AFI top 100 all time, on the Sight and Sound top 100. So it really is one of those things where I really hope going forward there is at least that open-mindedness of, like, the best movies get bad reviews and the bad movies get good reviews. That there's always going to be someone who likes a bad movie and always someone who hates a good one. That's just the case. Right. Well, and that honestly, this right here, because what you were saying, like, with that how you feel during it heightens it, or even a discussion after or finding out information can change how you feel about it. I think that's how film should be. I think that's how all art should be. I think one impression should not be the only thing you've ever focused on. I think that the fact that I like this movie more the more we talk about it is a credit to the movie. I mean, I think we're good at talking to each other, but we've talked to each other about a lot of movies, and I don't always feel like I love the movie more once we're talking about it. I think it's a credit to the movie that the more we talk about it and the more we point out things, the more I like it. If you heard Mike Lee talk about a movie that you thought was okay, and then by the time that you're done listening to him talk about it, you're like, actually, that was good. I think that's the way it should be. I think that that your experience is your experience, and that should always be. So listen to me. My larger point is, if you like Megalopolis, you go tell people you like Megalopolis. You shout it from the mountaintops. And if they say they don't like it, don't fight. Talk to them about it.
and the thing is, that's a great point. And the thing is, I fully expected, because we thought about this. So I think neither of us had seen it, and we had heard the first rollout of reviews saying it's like such a, like, no one could put a star rating on it on Letterboxd because it's such an anomaly. Like Dan Merle, as you were saying, like for this movie, he put it in his see it now, it's good, it's okay, it's bad, stay away. He put an arrow at all 5 of them because he was like, it's all of it. There's different reasons to stay away, different reasons to go, different reasons to say it's okay. Like, you know, he went through the whole spectrum, and I love that about this. But as soon as I heard that, I was like, Matt, we got to do a review on this, because I just knew this was going to be something that people would talk about as a so bad it's good masterpiece or failure. And it's funny because, like, I was fully prepared to get on here and either have to like defend it or potentially like talk badly about it because I hadn't seen it yet. But now, having seen it, I'm like, I'm still glad we're doing this episode, because it is that type of movie where it is taking such big swings, and like there is that question of what is intentional, what is not, that makes it a Framewreck movie to talk about. But I think we're both in agreement that it is a good movie. But I also understand why people think it's a bad movie, because it's odd, it's crazy, it's out there. But I think that's what makes it all the more fascinating. So, you know, like neither of us knew we were going to come on here and kind of like redeem it or like, you know, give it its kudos and its gold stars. But, you know, I think it's so cool that we did this.
Yeah, what's the funny thing is, like, I saw it before you saw it, and afterward I texted you. I said we still need to do the review, and because you were like, I don't even know if I'm gonna like it. I said we still need to do the review. I'm certain you are going to like it. I'm just not sure for which reason.
Right. Yeah. Even if you hate it, like that's where I'm like, the people who hate it and just were like bored by it are the most confusing people. Not to say you're invalid people out there listening who felt that way, but it's like, I feel like this is just such a movie with so much going on that it's like impossible to just be bored by it. But again, there are people out there who think that way. So I'd love to hear from them and hear why that is, why it was so grating for them. If maybe it's just the heightened language, but even then it was still accessible enough to understand what was going on. If it's that you just don't like the idea of these canceled actors in the film, that's valid. If you just don't like the style, that's valid, because like I said, it feels like it was conceptualized at a time when it was conceptualized but visualized in a modern sensibility. So it has this kind of weird, kind of foreign feel to it in its visuals and its pacing and its editing. I mean, like all the times where you'll see like two things happening on screen at the same time with like, yeah, I love all that stuff because it feels very retro but very new at the same time. So I do get all the different spectrums. The only thing I don't understand yet is the boredom factor. But I'm sure there's someone out there who can explain why they felt that way. But yeah, like you said, there's going to be people who love it because it's bad. Some people who love it because it's great, and it is great, and it is bad, and it is amazing. You know, like it's one of those things. It is all. Yeah, it's D on the multiple choice. So, any other things you want to highlight? Any moments that stuck out with you in this film? Like, I think we need to talk about the greatest. Is that a blank in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me joke I've ever seen? Which is where John Voight has a literal like crossbow under his blanket that looks like not just an erection, but like a pyramid under his thing. Like it's just perfectly pointed. I love that scene. That would have been like my Framewreck moment if we were to, or Trainwreck moment if we were to do superlatives, because like I cackled, and it happens late in the movie too. So I wasn't sure if it would still deliver. I was worried it was gonna like try to take itself a little bit more seriously toward the end, but then that happened. I'm like, nope. Any highlight moments for you?
Just there's so much. So I would say that if I were, the moment I think back to the most is probably the when it's toward the beginning. It's all exposition because it's Adam Driver getting on that scaffolding or whatever, and then basically doing a Shakespearean soliloquy to everyone. That kind of encapsulates what I love about this movie. Like, we needed that information. It was presented in a very strange way that we don't normally see. The actor was incredible and hot. It's just everything about it was just exactly what I want, and again, that represents pretty well why I love this movie. So
yeah, there's also the one moment that I know a lot of people are talking about, which happened at the festivals, which is where it like the whole film kind of condenses into a little square, and it's Adam Driver at a press conference, and at the festivals they had a guy actually go up and like say the lines to him. I'm realizing now, having seen the movie, that the guy who stands there is merely standing there mouthing the words because the audio is in the film. I don't know if it was played that way at the festivals or not, but that is the one thing where I'm like, I wish I was there for that opening crowd, because watching the scene in the theater, I was like, oh, this is where that's supposed to happen, and I was so tempted to come down there and just start talking, but I didn't know what the line was, so I didn't bother. But that was a little bit of, but that was the only real big letdown for me.
Me too. That actual moment was actually a bit of a letdown for me too, only because of all of the conversation surrounding it, and I was like, "This is what we're
hype.
talking about."
It was
so
overhyped.
much, you know,
so big enough where it feels like.
Yeah, and that's not the fault of the movie because the movie is what it is. But it's doing what it's doing. It's everybody else who's talking about it. What I do think is cool, a little tidbit about that, is that Francis Ford Coppola was trying to develop voice recognition technology so that people could ask questions and it would just show the one that matched the answer or the question that they could hear best or whatever, which I'm sure would never have worked. But and just would have required a bunch of people to yell in a theater. But I think that is super cool, and maybe one day we'll get that. But that's the kind of innovation you get from Francis Ford Coppola.
Right. Yeah, the execution is absolutely not there, but just the fact that he thought about it, like, what if we could do actual live Q&A with the audience mid-movie where there's technology that would organize it? Like, that's wild to me. And like, just the fact that he came up with it, it's like half the directors today would have even fathomed. There are some directors that have probably thought about the interactiveness of possibly having an interactive film in some capacity, but I think we've seen the extent of that, like Netflix, the Choose Your Adventures, like, I feel like that's as far as that's going to go, at least in our lifetime, probably. But man, like, I love Cameron the big it just epitomizes what he might.
Jim and Cameron might. So. Yeah. But no, I mean, I think that pretty much said everything about this movie that I have without just doing a commentary.
Right. Yeah, because we can't, like, we don't want to spoil it for you guys because it is kind of in theaters still. So like, we couldn't talk about. There's one, like, I would say huge spoiler that happens to one character. I will call it the most startling jump scare I've ever seen in a theater, where it's I won't tell you how it's set up because I think the part of it that's fun is the surprise. But when you meet the character Sam with a very what does he say? Oh, I forget what he says about his name. He's like, it's a very to the point. The name is very to the point. That's what he says. Yeah. When you meet Sam, just know you're about to get startled. You know what I'm talking about, Matt? I don't want to say. That startled the crap out of me because, like, that was one moment where I might have like itched my eye and like I just, oh my gosh, can't even go into detail. But that was like one of the moments where I was caught off guard, and I don't know how, because I wasn't looking at my phone, I wasn't looking at popcorn, I just was caught off guard regardless. But yeah. Anything else, Megalopolis? Who's your favorite performance again? You said it was Chloe Fineman.
Chloe Fineman, just because she drew me so every single time. She drew my eye.
Yeah, I don't want to be basic, but for me, it's Adam Driver. I love him in everything. And a lot of people are like, fire your agent. I'm like, he has worked with Scorsese, he has worked with Spielberg, he has worked with, I believe, maybe the Wachowskis. I don't know. He's worked with Noah Baumbach. Like, he's worked with some of the best directors right now. Scott, you can't say that he's not getting at least interesting projects, because he's the best part of okay to bad projects. That's better than a mediocre performance in a really good one, in my opinion. But
I agree. Yeah. I think the fact that he does so many weird things is just an asset. It's just and is still so famous is just. I mean, he gets to rake in the money and do weird shit, so it's great.
Yeah, and he's not even in actor jail. Like, you would have thought after the whole, like, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker debacle, they've been like, let's not cast Adam Driver. No, he's just so good that people keep casting him, and there's a reason. Probably he's probably great on set as well. But any last thoughts, Matt, on Megalopolis? It's been about almost an hour.
Go see it. Go see it. That's all I have to say.
Love it. Have you thought of a star rating at this point? Or are you still toying with it?
I'm not sure I even could. I might come up with something. No, I haven't come up with a star rating. I will say that this has happened twice to me. Although I'm still not as conflicted on this, but when I left Tenet, I did go, I liked that movie, but I don't know that I could give it a star rating. I need to see it again. So that's so that one was, I left in a similar way where I couldn't give it a star rating immediately. But this one's even weirder and out there, and I'm not sure if I give it a star rating yet.
Yeah, I have no idea. I'll probably settle on 4 stars just because I just love it, but I'm also like, really I don't know. Anyway, go see it. Yeah, it's great. If you can't go see it, wait for it to come on streaming, and hopefully, like, pay that little extra money to rent it early. Like get the Blu-ray because it's gonna look great on your Blu-ray player. Like help finance this cult following that we want to make for this movie because it really does deserve of any movie out there right now. Like deserves to get the money reimbursed for all the passion put into it, in my opinion. But
12 stars. I've settled on 12 stars.
There you go.
Because that is the most fitting thing you could give this movie is 7 more than the actual scale goes.
Yeah, and based on our conversation about intention, this is not a Framewreck proper episode really, but like it's not going to be on the Mount Trashmore because I feel like there is enough like genuine merit to it. But you know, go see it. It's great. But Matt, anywhere else they can find you, they can follow you. We teased on our last episode that we're doing Thanksgiving next month with Stacy, so that's what's next for us on Framewreck. But anything else to tease? Obviously, we saw your teaser before this, but
yeah. So starting now, you can follow me on YouTube at Maddie Loves Movies, and on October 31st, Halloween Day, you'll be able to watch the very first episode of Camp Film Camp on Maddie Loves Movies,
which is 1 week away as of today, because this is airing on the 24th for y'all. Hopefully, Megalopolis is still there for a few more screenings for you to check out if you can. If not, if it's all been replaced by what's coming out this weekend, Conclave, and there's
Venom.
another big one, Venom. That's right. Yeah. So you
Venom.
probably can't find Megalopolis anywhere, but if you can, go see it. If you can an IMAX for somehow, you get an IMAX ticket, do it. But you can find me at Dylan Randazzo here at the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. This was very impromptu. I'm traveling. I'm at a hotel, so next time there'll be better sound, better visuals. My Wi-Fi won't put me at a slight delay, but I appreciate Matt for getting on and talking for an hour about this movie because I just think we both just needed to chat about it, especially because I feel like this is going to kind of get that reputation, that legacy. I hope it does. But what did you think of Megalopolis? Let us know in the comments below. Like this, subscribe, and check out more Framewreck. We got Thanksgiving coming up next month with Stacy as our guest. We just did Old with Carly. Check that out. We did a Buffy draft that Matt and I were both on. That was very fun, very long, but very fun. And that poll I posted last night. But thank you so much for watching this review, this Framewreck special, I guess. We'll count it as a Framewreck episode, but it is a very unconventional one because the movie's unconventional. So thank you so much for spending time here with us, and have a great rest of your day. And check out Maddie Loves Movies airing next week. It's launched now. You can follow, but check it out next week for the debut of the first episode of Matt's Film Camp Film. Damn, I screwed it up. It's okay. It's Framewreck. I'm allowed to flub. I'm tired. I'm also in Central Time, so it's like, woo. I love it. I love it, though. I love being in Central Time with you, Matt. But it is time to say farewell. Thanks, guys. See ya.
What a story, Mark.